Hello, I'm Marcia Cavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. What was supposed to be one of the biggest games of the season was thumbs down instead, as a major injury and more bad officiating left the black and blue. In the season's other major contest, the candidates for governor met in a debate last night, and what might be the tightest race is taking place in Jefferson Parish. We'll look at these matchups as well as there still being plenty of clogs left in the city's drains. Our Future Watch segment checks out the condition of shopping centers in our area. We'll also remember the life and family of Cokie Roberts. Joining us are tonight's Informed Sources. Errol Laborde, producer of Informed Sources, Clancy Dubose, political editor of Gambit, Don Ostrom, Channel 12's Future Watch reporter, and Mike Perlstein, investigative reporter, WWL-TV Channel 4. All right, we're going to go on over to Clancy first because we are in the governor's race and first televised debate was last night. Your takeaways.
All three of the major candidates landed some good blows on their major foes. I think probably Abraham landed the first one when he pulled out an op-ed that John Bel Edwards had written about sales taxes being a bad idea, and of course, sales taxes, how Edwards and the Republican legislature, by a 2/3 vote.
Which Edwards pointed out.
He pointed out several times. In fact, he pointed out something that I had forgotten about. A majority of the Republicans in the House and Senate voted for that sales tax. But nonetheless, Abraham could say, here's something you wrote saying this was a terrible idea and it would kill the economy, and that's what has happened. The Republican message against John Bel Edwards in this campaign has been, our economy's in the tank, we need to do something differently. Edwards' message is, I inherited a $2 billion deficit after Bobby Jindal had a $1 billion surplus. Now we have a $500 million surplus, which we can use to not only pay down our debt, but to build roads and bridges and make repairs and do all sorts of things that we haven't been able to do for almost 10 years now. And frankly, there are statistics out there to buttress whatever position you want to take. The old lies, damn lies, and statistics always applies in politics. But back to the debate, that was really Abraham's best moment when he landed that one on John Bel Edwards. A short while later, they were talking about expanding Medicaid, which has been a hallmark of Edwards' campaign in his first tenure. He talks about how we haven't lost any rural hospitals and we have almost a half million people who are employed now getting health insurance. But the question was about a work requirement. And of course, Edwards kind of skirts that and he says, we're doing a pilot program in Monroe. Risponi and Abraham say, we need to make people work. What they're not saying is that the expansion of Medicaid only covers people who are already working. But Edwards got a real good shot in there when he said, you know what, I think we need to have a work requirement for Congress members. It was previously pointed out in the same debate in a question to Abraham, you, Abraham, have missed 44% of the votes since January, more than any other member of Congress. He completely dodged that question and said, well, we're answering the phones and we're helping people with their problems, which is what congressional offices do, but you're also supposed to be there and vote. He totally ignored that. So Edwards wove it back in and says, we need a work requirement for Congress members. You should be up there voting. And Abraham kind of had this moment of panic, I think, because he said, well, what about your record, John Bel, when you were running for governor? And Edwards said, I didn't miss a day. He goes, well, Abraham said, well, I'm going to check it. He said, well, go ahead, I've already checked it. Not one day. And he said it like 3 or 4 times. I didn't miss a day, not a single day. And after that point, Abraham kind of wilted. He really didn't, he just lost his balance. He didn't look terrible, but he didn't really have his footing, to use a boxing metaphor. And Risponi, who has never run for public office before, actually got better and better. And he scored a point on the other two right after that exchange when the moderator actually forgot that it was Risponi's turn to respond, and he started to move to the next question. And Risponi said, hey, what about me? And then the moderator apologized, and Risponi had a great line. He said, look, I'm enjoying these two politicians argue with each other, because at every point, every question that was put to him during the debate, Risponi got his message out, which is, I'm not the politician, I'm a businessman, I'm the guy who creates jobs. And if anybody took votes off anybody else in this, I think it's possible, it's hard to measure, but I think it's possible that Rispone took some votes off Abraham. He certainly took a little bit of the shine off of him.
Of course, in this campaign, too, there's been some criticism of Rispone from the GOP because he's attacked Abraham in ads.
That's very recent. That just happened in the past week, and it actually pushed some people who were sitting on the sidelines to come out and endorse Abraham. But what's interesting is not so much who has endorsed him, but who still remains on the sidelines. Steve Scalise, Mike Johnson, Garrett Graves. These are members of Congress who served with Abraham, and they're still sitting on the sidelines. And the Republican Party and Lobby, the two biggest conservative voices in the state, have not done the party or the Republican candidates any big favors by endorsing both of them. That reinforces the whole Tweedledee, Tweedledum, what's the difference between these two guys kind of thing, as opposed to picking one, saying this is the guy.
Well, Edwards, the incumbent governor, is hoping that he can take it again just in the primary. Is it looking like he will be able to?
According to the last poll done by Bernie Pincinat, which is the poll that I really trust, and in the raw numbers, Edwards is at 47%. But when you look at the African-American undecided, there's room there very likely for him to get another 2% of the overall, maybe even 3%. So he's right at 50%. And then when you factor out the undecideds, of course, this is all a lot of calculating, but everybody's vote goes up. He's got Edwards that has somewhere between 55 and 57% of the decided vote. So it really comes down to turnout. And I think in the last week of the campaign, Edwards is going to spend the vast majority of his resources on getting the vote out. If he gets good weather and nothing else happens between now and then, and of course the opponents are going to try to make things happen, but if things don't change from where they are today, it really comes down to turnout. And if Edwards gets his turnout, he very likely could get a majority of the vote on October 12th.
You get two Republican opponents. They have to kind of divide their attack interests, which is they have to, if they think they can, push Edwards into a runoff, they want to be that person. So they do have to spend some time attacking, the other Republican.
Yeah, so
they want to drag,
peel off him, but they want to
drag
pass each other
Edwards
up. Yeah.
below 50%.
Yeah, Edwards has only one job: get the vote out. The Republicans have two jobs: keep him below 50%, and then make sure I get ahead of the other guy.
I always thought the really decisive day in this campaign was the day Senator John Kennedy announced he wasn't going to run, right?
Absolutely.
So when that came, it kind of took the Republicans out. You almost think that there was some kind of feeling among Republicans, let's give him his 4 more terms, 4 more years. He's term limited. 4 years from now, we're going to elect a Republican, and then we're back to Republican rule again.
I don't think that there was any discussions of that. I think there may have been some individual Republicans out there who perhaps wanted to run, but you're absolutely right about Kennedy. Kennedy actually sucked the air out of the room because he's acted like he was going to run for the last 5 election cycles, but never more so than this time. And if he had announced last August that he wasn't running, and then Scalise didn't run, and Jeff Landry didn't run, that's the first tier. Those 3 guys were the first string, if you will, of the Republican potential candidates for governor. When each of them backed out, Kennedy didn't do it till December. Then it was Abraham's turn. Well, then we'd already passed up Thanksgiving. It was Christmas and Hanukkah and the Saints and the Sugar Bowl and LSU. So it was mid-January of this year before Abraham could even begin to get some traction. He lost 4 to 6 months because of Kennedy acting like he was going to run.
Okay, we need to move now from politics to our other favorite thing to talk about, and that's football.
Well, as excited as everybody was last week, this is going to be one of the big games of the season, and it could hardly have gone worse than it did. Once again, there was an awful call from the officials. This one that actually took back a touchdown. And then there was, of course, what happened to Drew Brees. The one good thing that came out of this is Walt Handelsman
I know,
cartoon.
it's just perfect.
This
It's really
was last
great.
Tuesday, which is brilliant. You see Drew Brees, who's waiting for a hand surgeon. You see a referee waiting for an eye specialist. And you see the New Orleans fan, that nation, waiting for an anxiety specialist.
And for those of us who know Walt, there is no more diehard Saints fan than Walt Handelsman.
Leave it to Walt to encapsulate it in
The real
one
feeling
frame,
of it
right?
all.
And he did it. That's brilliant, and we want to thank him for letting us run it. And so, but what we've seen this week is, well, first of all, going into the season, I mean, the Saints. When people were talking about Super Bowl, I mean, the Saints were early in the discussion. I mean, some of the power rankings had them first, and now all that's being reevaluated. There's still a possibility they can get to the playoffs, but it's going to be a battle. There's going to be some tough games. In the beginning of the season, it's going to be tough. Playing Seattle this week's going to be tough. Then they come back and they play Dallas, and both of them, as far as we know, without without Drew Brees. And so, as far as all the, for as much as the Saints, this town loves the Saints, there are times they just break our hearts.
Yeah, I mean, that has
This one
happened.
wasn't their doing.
Right.
Sometimes it's when they mess up. They didn't mess up. The refs made up, and it's just
Yeah.
bad luck that Drew got injured.
Got injured. That was so hard to see him
Yes.
hurt like that, and trying to hold the
not even be
football,
able to
and he
pick
could
up a
not.
ball.
That was definitely heartbreaking. Well, he had supposedly successful surgery this week, and you know he's going to work hard to
Yes.
rehabilitate his hand. But who's quarterbacking for us this week?
Well, I think it's going to be Bridgewater. That's always clear. I mean, that's what he was signed up to be, the backup quarterback, and so this is his big choice. I know there's a lot of sentimental backing for Taysom Hill, who's had some great games and great moments, but I think Bridgewater's second. But you look at Taysom Hill, is that when he played at Brigham Young, he faced serious injury as a quarterback. And
4 years in a row.
Yeah. He knows what it's all about to be out for the season, but ultimately came back and had the will and everything else.
Taysom already sees Tom on the field in gimmick plays and trick plays, and now you may actually see a little more of that. He's a factor.
I would think both quarterbacks will receive some snaps. Maybe
That's what
Bridgewater
people
will
are
start.
ex-
But
As far as the
I think
starters.
It depends on how the game. If the game's going well and Bridgewater's in there and he's kind of in his
that's-
rhythm, I think the coach is not going to take him
Yeah,
out.
no.
That's the big
He's going to let him
question.
stay in his rhythm.
Now you got, Drew's out 6 to 8 weeks,
Yeah.
and this is an audition for Teddy Bridgewater to
Yeah.
see, if he is
if
an
he's a
NFL
legitimate
Yeah.
backup.
starting quarterback. And how long of a rope does he have? Because we have Taysom Hill, obviously a fan favorite. He's shown some unique abilities as a running quarterback.
But Hill
so
is
how,
not a drop back, sit in the pocket kind of guy
No.
like Teddy and Drew.
But again, if things go south under Teddy Bridgewater, how many games does he get before
Right.
Taysom Hill
Well, it
gets
was
a
such a
chance?
difficult situation for him, particularly against the Rams. How much did we want to see the Rams annihilated by the Saints?
Right.
Because of what happened.
Another call and
at the
another
end of
bad
the
call
last
with the,
season.
Horrible.
where the
And that
refs
was-
immediately
the
said,
way
"Our
out.
bad,
Yeah.
we made a mistake."
Well, okay, we still believe, definitely do, and
We're
we
over
want
it,
to
but
see.
we still believe.
Drew, please heal real quickly. Okay, doke, Mike, over to you. And also a consistent problem. There's stuff in the canals that's clogging up the drainage in the city of New Orleans. I mean, there's still a lot of stuff down there.
Right, and it's not just the canals, but we at least have, I guess if you want to look at the good news, at least a clearer picture of how much is in one major canal that had been blocked. It overtopped on July 10th. They sent, for the first time in decades apparently, because they pulled out the car that got submerged during Katrina, and went another 2.5 miles, actually a little more than that, on this submerged portion of the Lafitte Canal. Runs along the Lafitte Greenway, and they took out, initially everybody was shocked when they said 370 tons of debris. Now it's closer to 900 tons of debris.
Wow.
But the shocker was they said, and that's 2%. They didn't say
what's in
2%. I actually did the math. They said that there were 22,000 cubic meters, 22,000 tons remaining. So quick calculation shows that that's 98% is left behind in that canal. And the reason...
No wonder New Orleans is sinking.
There you go. Well, anyway, the reason given for why they didn't, continue that job, which was with contractors, was ran out of money. So they got 2% out. Now, Gaston Corban, the new director of Search and Water Board, stated that they got the sort of the major impediments that had been sort of piled up: cars, couches, shopping carts. What is left is about 2 feet for the entire length of that portion of the canal for nearly 3 miles of muck, mostly mud, silt, debris, leaves, and that sort of thing that needs to be removed. And they're waiting on some way to pay for that. But clearly,
And somewhere to dump it, I imagine too.
well, they do have the landfill. That's another problem. It's a long haul to the landfill for that. It makes the job expensive, and that's just one of the many large canals that feed into pumping stations. Now, again, if you want to look at the good news, after repeat flooding we had it July 10th, August 26th, they do seem to be, at least through process of elimination, crossing off things that they know are not the root cause of the bulk of the flooding. So all the pumps, or the majority of them, were working, and the electricity to power them was working, and the manpower to man those pumping stations.
They weren't
Everybody
asleep
was.
at the job this time.
What's that?
They weren't sleeping at the pumping
Everyone was
station.
all they could actually get to them, and everybody was awake. So they've ruled some of those things out, which were a root cause, going back to 2017. So now the city is zeroing in on not just the sewage and water board side, which is those large canals, but also catch basins and 1,500 miles of the smaller pipes that take water from the catch basins to the large water mains in the middle of the street to the canals. And they were frank. For the first time, I think they, Latoya Cantrell, president of the Sewage and Water Board, said, look, we inherited this problem. It's decades of deferred maintenance and neglect. We have not scratched the surface on how much is clogged under the ground.
But they're recognizing this is what we need to address.
Right.
So going
But
after
again, they pulled out 2%, 98% to go in that one canal.
All right, Mike, thanks a lot. We're going to go over to Dawn right now and talk about shopping, looking at Jefferson Parish.
Looking at Jefferson Parish, it's really pretty much good news across the board, except for maybe the Esplanade Shopping Center. We have some anomalies in our region. Shopping nationwide does better at a shopping center where there's more lifestyle choices. It's not just retail, where you have athletic opportunities and movies and maybe even medical and residential. Lakeside Shopping Center really is strictly a shopping center, and it outperforms most malls in the country in terms of its success. I was told this week that if there are retailers looking to come into our market, not just Jefferson Parish, but the region in general, new retailers who aren't here, they choose to go to Lakeside first because the customer base there, the demographics are there. Everybody who wants to start somewhere in Southeast Louisiana wants to start at Lakeside. So it continues to outperform and be an anomaly shopping center. The good news, both in terms of Clearview Shopping Center and Oakwood on the West Bank, they both held Sears stores in the past. Sears is now shut down. Those are large big box stores that were privately owned in both of those cases. Both shopping centers have acquired that real estate, so it's now in the hands of the shopping center owners to be able to redevelop. I'm told there are massive redevelopment plans for the Clearview Shopping Center, and it could be a combination of medical, residential, hotels. They're all in play. There are no announcements for when that redevelopment will happen, but it should be soon.
So Sears owned both of the stores.
They owned
at both of
they
shopping
owned
centers?
the real estate that the stores were in, and now the shopping center owners own that real estate. Clearview's Target is a good performer. The rest of the mall, I walked it yesterday, has a whole lot of vacancy. So there's a lot of room in play for that mall to be redeveloped and a lot of room. There's some, there's a movie theater there that does pretty well, and there are some stores that are performing. Oakwood Shopping Center is really holding its own in terms of foot traffic and successful stores. They again acquired that Sears, so there are redevelopment plans there. Esplanade Shopping Center, we all talked before the show, and I've lived in this market for more than 21 years, and I don't remember it being a successful, happy, thriving shopping center. You said maybe
in the beginning, the early
30
days,
years ago. The city of Kenner is entertaining plans to possibly move offices into that shopping center. That does not improve the health of retail, though. There needs to be more foot traffic to draw, and it really is. Unlike some smaller retail areas in a shopping mall, you need the big anchor stores to draw the other stores in. So Esplanade really is in search of and needs a big anchor to get it back up and holding its own. But for all the knocks on retail, all the people shopping online more and having home delivery more, Jefferson Parish as a whole, its shopping is doing quite well. Elmwood Shopping Center, we've talked before about it being redeveloped into more of a lifestyle center. You should start seeing visible changes to Elmwood in the next year and a half as it changes over to some residential and some more lifestyle things.
So you mean non-retail by lifestyle?
Non-retail, either sports or medicine or a combination of all of that.
Elmwood is just always just a buzz of activity.
Well, and they're changing the whole look of it too to beautify it in a way, more landscaping, more setback from the road, less just concrete.
You kind of have to get used to it too. A friend of mine used to call it the Bermuda Triangle,
Yes.
but it's getting a little bit clearer now. All right, Don, thanks a lot. Clarence, going to go back over to you and stay. We're sticking with Jefferson Parish, but the race out there for president.
You know, Jefferson Parish, in contrast to the rest of the state, or at least in southeast Louisiana, you know, the governor's race is important, but the waters are pretty calm everywhere except in Jefferson Parish. We have a hot race for parish president, as you just mentioned, but we also got a hot race for sheriff and a hot race for council member at large. But I think the parish president's race, even with Mike Yenny not running, is still going to be a heated race. I think it's going to potentially get ugly before it's all over. You have a former parish president who served one term, John Young, ran for lieutenant governor 4 years ago after serving one term as parish president, did not make the runoff, went into private law practice for a while, and he now wants to come back. And Cynthia Lee Sheng, who's been on the council, first as a district council member for 2 terms, or a term and a half really, and then as an at-large member for the last 4 years. She was not term limited. She was drafted to run for parish president even before Mike Yenny announced he was not going to run, although it was clear to everybody that Yenny had no shot at getting reelected. But when Yenny finally did take himself out of the race, it came down to Young versus Lee Sheng, although there is another person, a third candidate running who's made no noise whatsoever, but you never know. In a close race, that could be enough to cause a runoff. I think the race is fairly close, although I think that Lee Sheng is ahead. We were talking before the show went on. She's kind of the fresh face, even though she's familiar. She's Harry Lee's daughter. She's been on the council for 10 years. John Young has been parish president. And I think there is no Darth Vader in this race. Neither one of them has reputation for dishonesty or corruption or anything like that. It's really a question of style. Cynthia Lee Sheng is one who gets along with everybody else. John Young has always been kind of a lone wolf. When he was parish president, very few people on the council got along with him. They all spoke bad about him. He spoke bad about them. There was not a lot of communication back and forth, and that caused problems. Lee Sheng is somebody who kind of reaches out to people and will work, as they say in kindergarten report cards, she works well with others. Young does not. He says that's a mark of his independence. And look, that's a message that can resonate, but I think it's going to get down to, are voters looking for somebody different? And what kind of style do they look for?
And what about support? Lee Sheng?
Lee Sheng is getting more political support, although Young got the Alliance for Good Government, but Lee Sheng got both the chamber and organized labor and various, most of the elected officials who are taking a position are with Lee Sheng, and some of those who are even running for office right now, particularly on the council, are also with her, but they've got their own races. But if she wins, and the people who are running for the council that I think are going to win, you're going to see kind of a Pax Romana in Jefferson Parish. You're going to see the parish president's office and the council really working hand in glove to do what they think needs to be done.
But a possibility for a runoff because of that third
Yes,
candidate.
possibility.
Okay.
You know, 4 years ago, when he ran for lieutenant governor, I think a lot of people saw him as the early favorite to be elected. At the same time, David Vitter was running for governor. So you had the possibility of a lieutenant governor and the governor both coming from Jefferson Parish, and Steve Scalise was the House whip at that time. And so you really saw the emergence, what seemed like it would be Jefferson Parish.
That's
You
a
talk
real
about
power
Pax,
base,
you
yeah.
talk about Pax Romana. This was Romana right here.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
it just never really materialized. I mean,
Well,
all kinds of
except
things happened.
Young just didn't really put it together for lieutenant governor. Billy Nungesser is, Young certainly came across as smarter, let's say, more schooled and more polished than Billy Nungesser. But Nungesser is, I gotta see how I can say this on TV, but you see, he's got a lot of fortitude, and
But he has a folksy demeanor about
folksy
him, and
demeanor,
that
exactly.
resonates
People
in
around
rural
the state.
parishes.
A
It's
lot of
very
and he
energy
is
in
a
his
ball of
campaign.
energy. He
Yep.
didn't sleep, and he had run for not parish, I'm sorry. He had run for lieutenant governor once before, lost a hotly contested race to Jay Darden, and he and Jay Darden patched it up, and he had a lot of infrastructure around the state, which Young did not
Okay,
have.
but I'm going to stop this
And
now.
Young
I
didn't
have
get
to
along
stop
with
this
his own
conversation
folks
right now. If we're
at
going
all.
to talk about Cokie Roberts, and I know we
Yes.
all want to. So let's move over to that. We lost Cokie Roberts this
Okay,
this
well,
week
well,
to
well, a lot of
cancer, and-
stories. I'll just tell mine, but if anybody wants to jump in. I remember in 2005, at the end of March 2005, she and Steve Roberts, her husband, were in town, and they were going to be on the panel at the Tennessee Williams Festival. It was going to be the two of them plus Lindy, and it would be a great three-way panel. And then that Friday, she got a call from ABC because Pope John Paul II was about to die. They knew that. And so, of course, she was an ABC correspondent. And then Lindy had been ambassador to the Holy See, so who better to do it? So she left. And so it was just a panel between Steve Roberts and Lindy Boggs. And it went across beautifully. But I remember Steve Roberts, who's Jewish, and he married into the ultimate of Catholic families, all right? In the Catholic family, of course, the mother having been ambassador. And when Lindy was ambassador in the Vatican City, she used to like to joke that she had the toughest job in politics, being Bill Clinton's ambassador to the Pope. All right, but Steve Roberts told the story that one time they were visiting Lindy at the Vatican, and it was me, John Paul II, and they were brought into this little chapel, and they were just kind of sitting down, and they were waiting, and nothing happened. And all of a sudden, this figure rose up front, and it was the Pope who had been lying prone on the floor in prayer. And then all of a sudden, he just popped up, and he was just very proud of him.
And of course, Lindy Boggs was the mother of Cokie Roberts, and her father was Hale Boggs, who had been a very powerful Louisiana congressperson. So she really, she grew up in politics.
Yeah, and you know what, the way she and Steve wrote about politics, it was almost like Lindy and Hale writing it. She channeled her mom in many ways. Lindy was a trailblazer. Cokie was a trailblazer.
Cokie definitely was, yes.
For women in journalism, especially political journalism. And the thing that's interesting that I noted, two things. Number one, with Cokie gone, there's not many voices of civility left. And they were very big on arguing for more civility in politics. And God knows we need that right now. The other interesting thing, all three of Lindy and Hale's children, their son Tommy, their elder daughter Barbara Sigmund, and Cokie, all went into politics, but each went into a different lane. Tommy was a lobbyist.
Right.
Barbara was an elected official, the mayor of Princeton, New Jersey, and Cokie was a political journalist. So they all went into the family business, but in different ways.
Well, she was just such an elegant,
Yes.
lovely woman,
And a
very,
pioneer.
Very much
very
like her
strong
mom.
woman.
And-
Like you said, she was a real pioneer for women in journalism,
but
particularly
also
over
with
at
NPR.
Right.
One of the early people in
Yeah,
NPR.
with three women there, they call them the Fallopian Club. I love that. All right, it's time to look ahead.
Okay. Also, in the October 12th ballot, there's 4 constitutional amendments. One of them might be of interest in New Orleans. It has to do with property tax and all that. But if you want to find out more about it, look at PAR's, Public Affairs Research Council's website. They've just put out a publication which is very good about explaining the
You
issues.
see it up there.
And there's the address.
ParLouisiana.org.
And they don't endorse, they just explain.
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Right.
it's a good explanation though.
Okay, Clarence?
I think between now and 2 weeks from now, the governor is going to make a big announcement. I'm not sure what it is, but it's going to be something involving either finances or legalities and something that ties into his campaign.
Conveniently before the
Yes,
election.
conveniently.
Don?
We talked a lot about the Saints, but get ready for the Zion era. A week from Monday is the first press conference, the season opening press conference for the
All right,
Pelicans.
Media
exciting
day.
time.
And they are, media day. They are Zion happy.
All right, Mike?
Hey, we're on the eve of fall, which was the promised opening of the new terminal at the airport.
Sometime in fall.
Sometime in fall, but still no date announced. They keep saying finishing touches, but
Fall here
everyone's-
lasts a long
Now
time.
that we're here in fall, we have 3-month window there
Okay.
for a date.
All righty, guys. Thanks a lot for being here. Thank you all for joining us. We'll see you again next week for Informed Sources. Have a good evening.